Alright, let's go ahead and get started here. Let's go over to... well, first things first, let's not forget. We must start our journey today by not forgetting the mandatory item. Who's a good boy? Alright, we're good there. Now... sure, let's start with a frozen swamp. And what else do we need? We're good there. Let's not play Bagman. Let's go over to... we're probably trying to be a little bit stealthy here. Let's go for speed actually this time. Oh, you poor... the rig's so bad. Can't carry anything. Let's go over to this one. Let's see. So we're still not doing silencers. Hey, Finder. With no silencers in mind, what do we want to do? I guess we just heal M4 then. 556. There you go. Well, I'm really out of 556. Oh, geez. All right. Let's talk to Grillo here. Get some 556. That's wait. Why don't you have a? This is such a weird thing going on. Like, there's something weird where it like saves your thumbnail, but it doesn't actually save the loadout of the gun. Very weird bug. All we really care about here is the drum mag though, it's fine. And we should be good there. We definitely need to be stealthy at this time though. Frozen Swamp, we'll do Scavenger Camp, and we need... okay. Just those two. Should we bring a jump? Probably not. Hey, Flip. No, but probably just still, like, unflumming myself. It will clear up in time. It's just the winter, right? Always start the day a little bit nasally.
Don't leave anything on the cutting room floor.
It will clear up, trust me. That's the secret, I'm always rough. No, it will clear up. As I wake up, you know, and clear up, it'll be fine. I forgot how fast Scav Girl was. Nice Finder. It is kind of crazy how, like, when you're used to playing Masked Man and Bagman, you forget the speed of high-level Scav Girl. My god. Alright. He's out of the way now. Can I just... I wonder if this is a bit too ludicrous, to be honest. Let's go the other way. I mean, I guess this is the downside for having bad rigs. Is you have to move at Mach 1. Because I actually did forget how fast she is. Especially when she's wearing nothing too. I guess that's the biggest thing also is because we don't have meds at all really. And we didn't bring a lot of ammo. We're basically carrying nothing. Hey boo boo. Yeah, that's probably why too, I imagine, because we usually come in pretty heavy. Up we go. So, Frog, the two reasons why, like, well, the first reason is it's probably an asset store buy. The second is that it's a somewhat futuristic looking tank. Despite like existing, right? Like if you look at all the tanks of current like MBTs, right? The Merkava looks pretty like fancy high-tech-ish. And the third is it's a tank that it's a tank that looks sci-fi, but not everyone knows exist. Like until you get to like tank nerds, people like the general populace doesn't know what a Merkava battle tank is. Sure, they know what a T90 is probably, but like, unless you get to like tank nerds, like they don't know the Merkava. Okay, that's a cool, interesting new tank. Oh no, there are like I think there's variants of Merkavas, right?
Enemy contact. Not sure where.
No, but yeah, it's trust me, like I personally would love more bespoke things to the setting, but like naturally, right? You know, modeling, animation, rigging, all this stuff takes time. Weirdly enough, too, right? I actually, yeah, they are. I think everyone probably should be too. Weirdly enough, too, I actually think tanks should be almost weirdly more effective. I don't think they'll change it. The most I'll ever think they'll do, Epirus, is probably just update things. The guns they might actually change, at least aesthetically, but I think the tanks are here to stay. But once again, they might update them aesthetically.
Shit. Taking fire.
Yeah, I'm curious if, so like, it almost feels like Europa's the straight man in this setting, right? Like they're the ones you're supposed to contrast with, essentially. I personally prefer Masked Man the most, Ricochet. Like I am genuinely curious too how we're gonna see expansions with Europa. It could be a thing too, right? Where as opposed to getting new units, essentially with Europa, it's more about them getting new weapons. So like you'll still have the base European infantry, but they get new stuff. I would personally love to, if they could manage it. That was weird. Like weapon teams. It'd be cool to see like, you know, Europeans operating mortars, heavy artillery, or not even like heavy artillery, but just like emplacement and stuff like that. That could be like one of their gimmicks too. I'm probably pretty low right now, I gotta be careful. Alright, I pray this is clear now. Yeah, like they're very, they're very stock right now. It's like, it's kind of how I feel with the guns too, right? Is like the guns, I'm okay with them, but they're just like, they're just a bit too stock for me, right? I imagine we're probably pretty freaking hurt right now. Ricochet, I imagine too, like, they did talk about in regards to like, well, I don't think we'll get that far with faction rep, but it's probably gonna be expanded upon too. In regards to like, maybe factions that you're not allied with per se, but are much more neutral toward you because of your rep. Like leaving you alone. Yeah, I definitely agree with that sentiment, right? I wonder if it's too... Okay, I'm really low HP, I gotta leave. Time to run. That's my only indicator right now of like when I'm low HP is that sound right there. No, I definitely understand the sentiment too, right? It says like, you know, your Ruska and your agent gets all the cool stuff. So A, Europa feels left out, and we never see like the cool Euruscan units fight the cool Eurasian units. Oh no, they definitely play together. I think it's on purpose too, right? There's supposed to be this like kind of like technological alliance between those two. All right, let's see how bad we were. Oh, you know, we have plenty of HP left. We can take a few more shots. I'm surprised we lived on the staircase though.
Easy enough.
That was a bit sketch. We didn't get that one done though, that's so sad. So I know, Ricochet, that they were like, in one of the Q&As, they're talking about like how they don't want you to like directly impact the war. Oh, sorry, not the war, but like the conflict in your local area. But they do want to kind of let you see the changing of the tides. And perhaps you might be like a butterfly in regards to that, but like for the most part, you're more like a spectator just moving around as things happen. I think it's to give you some idea of like some degree of ideological differences. So for example, Eurasia is much more technologically focused, much more advanced in that regard. They're trying to solve the issue of the future with technology as opposed to adapting themselves, right? Like they're replacing their bodies with just pure cybernetics. And in regards to Ruska though, they seem much more interested about adapting their bodies via technology to like modify them to be more fitting for this current environment, right? They're much more interested in melding biology and technology as opposed to Eurasia. The last update we had was like in the end of January, or just January, right? So we haven't really had any updates at all forward. Like every time we get a content patch, we get small updates for performance, but like nothing major so far. All right, quest-wise. Yeah, that's a good way of putting it too, yeah. There is degree. Just playing around, Ivan. Just playing around. Just, once again, basically nothing on, like no healing, no silencers, and no HUD. just a way of enjoying the game. Alright, we're good there. We do need to bring cigarettes. Just a pair. That can't be right. Benjamin, I would go through your settings. Something doesn't seem right there. Benjamin, if that's the case, if that's what you got, there is something wrong with your machine. Like, go through the BIOS, go through the drivers, go through, like, just go check everything. Because you should be having plenty of FPS. I have a worse machine than you, and I get more frames in 60 than you're currently getting, so there's something wrong with your machine. Like, if you're getting a stable 60 FPS and it's, like, not stuttery, so it's not like shaders, like, go check the BIOS, make sure you have XMP on and stuff like that. Like, I know it's pretty simple stuff, but at the same time, you should be getting way better frames than that. Stop it. Yeah, like, go check out to see if XMP is running for your actual proper DDR5 speeds. There's something weird going on with the machine. You should be getting way better frames than that. Oh no, you shouldn't... Are you playing, like, all Ultra Ford? Try just running down to full high. Yeah, just try run, like, let me know the frames you get on a high, because, like, you should not have issues on a high ultra, like, even 1080p though, like, man, you shouldn't be that bad. The 1080p high, you should be getting, like, 90 FPS, I would think. Yeah, not gonna go that way. Me through. Nah, I would still, like, go around and look through your machine and see if you can optimize a bit your machine-wide, because, like, you should be having, like, you should have plenty of frames. So, going back to Regi's point though too, I would find it interesting to see more variants of zombies, or cyborgs rather. I kind of feel too that, like, it'd be cool if Eurasia did things with its dead cyborgs a bit more. So, like, right now it just seems like Mother Courage's will, like, basically take the spare parts or take the dead cyborgs and, like, recombine them into living cyborgs, or into, you know, living cyborgs. But I wonder too if they would actually make, like, amalgamations also. So, like, for example, as opposed to having, like, scramblers or cyborgs, you'd have, like, a cyborg that's, like, all legs, like a spider zorg, a spider-borg. Hey, John. Let's go ahead and drop this off. Yeah, kind of like that, Frog. I mean, or other ideas too, right? Like, for example, there's the spider cyborg, but there's also, like, Imagine, for example, they just turned, which like probably don't do this, but like if they basically turn a bunch of cyborgs into a ball, and you just had like, what's that Bollywood movie? Oh my god. There's a Bollywood movie that, I mean, they're all great, but where like a bunch of like, is a police officer or military, they combine into like a giant like wheel. Bollywood's great. It seems like, it genuinely seems like every Bollywood writer, yeah, the one with like the shield wheel, something like that, yeah. It seems like every Bollywood like director, actor, like, or not actor, but like writer is like on acid, and it's great. Only got one done. Run it back. So there's the Asian bombers, the corpse droppers, and the European Titans. Not really, not until we see more. If I would talk about any of them, it'd be the Titan. There's just not enough about the bomber currently. Like, the Titan actually has some substance to it, and you can go inside of it and explore. The bomber's just too one-dimensional right now to actually talk about. But it's certainly a thought. I kind of, like... I have a degree of reluctance talking about things like that that have no gameplay currently. Because I'm not sure, like... When I can't even see gameplay functionality, it makes me skeptical of like what the actual purpose is gonna be. And it's a lot of like... I only ever want to have like the deep dives, for example, be so speculative. I want them to be like a melding of like how they function and how they play, and also speculation, not just pure speculation. Apache, right? I would think of something too, right, with a very clear silhouette. But like an Apache would work. They could do a Cobra also. A Cobra's a pretty distinct silhouette. Yeah. That or something bespoke too, right? Like I wouldn't mind seeing like much more like... And also like with the Eurasian chopper, right? We kind of see like a melding of different choppers together. So I wonder what they would like meld together into like a European chopper. Yeah, it's also like... You are right in that regard, Frog, because also considering the like multicultural aspect of Europa. I did, Carrie. Mainly just interested in like basically the new units. I'm actually very curious about the new guns too, or the reworked guns. They kind of gave the impression that they were kind of doing a pass on the guns. So I'm curious what that will entail. Are we finally going to get... Are we finally going to be able to use first person? Is first person going to be usable actually for the first time ever? But no, I'm mainly excited for the guns. New units will be great too, new deployments, all that good stuff. It kind of, though I will say, sounded like they were actually planning about 2 updates though. So it might be like a good news, bad news thing. The good news might be we might be getting a patch earlier than I was expecting, like as opposed to like March. We might be seeing it at the end of Feb. The bad news though is it sounds like they're detaching this from the spawn rework, perhaps. I could be misinterpreting too, but like what I kind of took away from them talking about it was like, it seems like they're breaking up the big Q1 patch into 2 patches, with the first patch being primarily quality of life focused, and then the second patch probably being much more content focused. Essentially, it sounds like they need a lot more time for some like content stuff, but not as much for the quality of life stuff. You do not see me. I said you don't see me. What the f- Leave me alone.
Sneaking around shit.
All right. No, stop it. Let me open the door. Oh god, no. I'm sorry. Yeah, seeing like the European elite would be interesting too. Now I will say also, in regards to the European like special units and elite, that could be one aspect too that's giving them some trouble or making them take a little bit longer. Is that as opposed to like Europa or Yoruska, where you can just make weird units that by design are pretty tanky and like lethal, it might be the case too where Europa elite units are much more either stealthy or have advanced tactics. Did I have an HK on me and not know? It felt like I had HKs on me and didn't know. Did I? The data caches? It might have been data caches. I didn't have the... I don't think I had the notification on my rig, but it definitely felt like I had HKs on me there. Who knows what the grin is? I know that poor guy is still like looking for what's it called. That poor guy's been like asking for like the last 3 or 4 Q&As what the hell grin means. All right, time to go back over to. Let's go over to Shaman though. Let's actually see how nice a slightly faster or slightly slower character is, but better character. Shotgun time? Maybe not. I didn't do the alarms to notice it. Yeah, okay, that's fair. I probably picked up some data caches. The curse of looting all. Yeah, I mean, the first one definitely made me sus too, seeing an EOD down there by himself. I was like, that's probably a 100 killer, but no. I did it again. What's going on with this thing? Very buggy. Alright, we're good. I want to open the door. In a pizza army for the working man. Who's that guy? What was his name? Steve or something like that? The guy does like the MRE videos. Dude, I imagine though, man. You can tell too, right? He like, yeah, Steve MRE, because he takes breaks in between doing those videos. Like, you have to tell, eating that many MREs is like does wonders on your digestion tract. It can't be that good to eat so much food with that many preservatives in it consistently. Though he does take breaks. Yeah, exactly right. I imagine that sucks too, right? Do they let you like chill out for food poisoning? I imagine they kind of have to. Like, if you have food poisoning in the army, right? They kind of had to let you chill out. Go to sick bay, I guess. No.
They are sending their best. We don't have much
I just
time.
want to open the door, man. Now, going back to the Q&A though, I will say, like, I'm probably expecting maybe like well, yeah, they also mentioned too how they wanted to do like a closed beta branch.
Our main threat is causing the distance.
And maybe they're already doing that, but like, yeah, like, I guess, I don't know. But yeah, I'm guessing like there's gonna be probably 2 patches in Q1 again, but like one's gonna be like not a full content patch, it's like a quality of life patch, and then a content patch later. Or maybe it could just be one giant patch too, but a lot more quality of life focused. But new units will be nice, like new units and new guns and like a reworking of certain things will make the game feel fresh again for sure. Like, if the Q1 patch was again just like another patch with a map and a few new quests, it would be kind of, still nice, but, yeah, that does kind of seem to be the trend with Europa, right? Like, they don't necessarily have a lot of... As opposed for Europa being a bunch of, like, special units, it's much more, or rather, like, horror units, right? It's much more about, special units like Pyro, and so on and so forth, like elite infantry. Hey, Jamie. Not much right now. Like, if you play the December patch, that's all we really have gotten so far. They fixed a few things in January with the December patch, but that's about it for now. They did have a Q&A. HKs, yeah. The downside of loot all. I might just leave, to be honest. Hey, Delta. But no, like, if you play the December patch, not much since then. There is that spider mech, though, I will say, that we've seen for Europa, right?
Beneath the ash means safety, if you can stand the smell.
Ooh, on that note point, Ragey, too, in the Q&A also they talked about trying to update some of the older units' animations. Or, like, rather give them the full functionality they should have. For example, the Orgamech. You have to like understand too. When I'm doing videos, I have to like be very cautious on what I show because I don't want to present it as I want them to like stand the test of time a bit and not seem like the AI's bugging out and I'm taking a picture of it. And the Orgamech can be pretty rough in its movements sometimes. It can be a real character. So like they definitely they feel that too, and it seems like they're updating the Orgamech a bit, or at least the Orgamech for movement and rigging and like other things they can do. So I'm curious if we're gonna see like a much more of a super soldier kind of quality to them, because like right now the Orgamechs are pretty derpy. Was it like 2 streams ago? We basically just had to like walk in a we had to like walking what's it called? A loop. You mean Big Green the Mech or Big Green Heavy Tank? Like, they talked about the big green, the mech, in regards to, like, they wanted to, oh, the tank. I can't recall them talking about big green, the tank, or a big green tank. But like, in regards to like super giant units, they were talking about how they don't want it to be like go inside. They want it to be more like dealing with like weak spots and so on and so forth. Like, it seemed like there's a different directions they could go in regards to like units like that, and they're much more interested in exploring, like, you know, taking down something like that with like bespoke weapons for certain factions, as opposed to like necessarily going inside of it. It makes sense too, right? Like, it's a lot of extra work for them to like model the insides of a unit like that. It could be infinitely more work too, right? And then having that like physically work and then sync up properly and all that stuff. It's a really cool idea, but man, it would probably cause a lot of headache. So I'm definitely like perfectly fine with more like kind of, what's the right word? Simpler ways or simpler systems. Yeah. Like, it's really cool, like, for example, like Star Citizen, right? Where you can, like, be inside your ship moving around while it's flying around. And have everything work fine. And not break, you know? But, it's not an easy thing to do. It takes a while. And it's also just very time intensive, I'd imagine, also, so. The juice is not worth a squeeze. That's probably fine. Yeah, Reggie, I'm hoping we see that eventually too. That's like one big thing I'm kind of... I don't think we're gonna see it this patch, but I am curious and hoping to see like some progression, some very light progression, like foundations or cornerstones here and there. I kind of want to start seeing like the shadows of like progression in the game. Because right now it's just like, you kind of just get everything at once. Like, once you know how to play the game, for the most part, you can get everything basically right off the rip. There's really not much progression at all. In quests, and items, and literally anything. And even the innards, right? When you progress in the innards, there's not really much there at all. I didn't hit the spawn trigger. Down we go. There we go. Hello. I would like to report Poppin', the entire Scorched Enclave map. Alright, let's see if we can't find... the commander. Alright, we're good there. We also have Pyro. I don't see him currently, so either A, he's already dead, or he's over there. Man, it's gonna be so nice if the, like, I'm so, like, scared of getting hyped, because, like, every single, like, patch is like, they're gonna fix the guns this patch. They're gonna fix the guns this patch. And now they're saying something about guns, so like now I'm like very hyped for like actually being able to like snipe and have it be remotely accurate. Yeah. Yep, that hurt. I mean, I wouldn't think about weight too much in this game, considering we can like carry like what 1.3 thousand kilograms on Masked Man and Bagman. Bagman actually more too if you actually unlock all the stuff. I do not see Pyro. What are you? There's that bug still. I honestly feel like that'd be kind of gimmicky, Bob. I probably wouldn't like that. I think there's better ways of showing the horrors of war than that. Though I do agree in a sense, sound design is definitely one way of doing it, right? I don't know what they're gonna do for Night Shift, because technically speaking, like, a Night Shift Frozen Swamp is like one of the first maps where it feels too European to not have European there. Like, for example, we don't have a map currently where it's like, I guess Mech Trenches is that, right? No, sure, not Mech Trench, but Elephant Mausoleum's a pretty European map, but like, even then, they remove all Europeans from it. Like, would they just infest the, Conceptually, it would be really cool if, for example, like, it almost had almost like a zombie survival sort of vibe to it, in regards to, like, imagine if you're Europa and like you just have like floodlights everywhere, you have like fences everywhere, and like they just have like, they're on the map but they stick to the only the injection site area, right? Well, if it's like rest of it's like overrun with like horrifying creatures. Essentially, like, I'm basically thinking, like, think of it like you're in a stronghold, right? It's trying to survive against zombies. That's the injector site, I think, for me, for Europa during Night Shift. Like, all of everything else is, like, covered with, like, cyborgs and other horrifying creatures. Well, considering my local probability, I would never see it, right? Conceptually, it's probably not worth the time. And conceptually, too. I mean, like... if only... no one's ever gonna see it, right? 1 in a million? Like, consider this, too. You probably have, like, a couple % chance of getting a disabled gun. And I've seen people farm them consistently over lots of time and not be able to find one. Well, like, I imagine we'll see their Spec Ops, right? I have to imagine we're gonna see Spec Ops for what's it called? For Europa. Probably, like, keep in mind, too, Gunhead, for example, right? Gunhead is technically a European mech. So, we might actually see some gunheads out in the future, right? Some hostile gunheads. And considering how the trailers make Gunhead look, I imagine how much more souped up the European gunheads will be. Yeah, that's a lot of things, Jamie. Though I will say, just say what you will about YouTube. Like, I still think Twitch is worse. Though if they continue their descent, maybe it won't be the case. But I still do think YouTube's way better than Twitch, despite the fact I'm streaming on Twitch right now too. Just yeah, surplus. Yeah. Oh no, Ragey. Imagine if the European gunheads actually get cool things like that, and we don't. Though I will say, like, well, actually, that'd be a cool thing too. I will say, Rangy, conceptually, like considering Gunhead can't ADS, it would be interesting if you could actually. That's the one way you could scope, is by having like a scoped gun on your head. It totally wouldn't work with the current system they have, but like conceptually, it seems really cool to me. You ADS by scoping your gun. Oh god. With the other gun. So like, you're using the iron sights of the gun that you have equipped through your head scope. It would be such a mess. It'd be so funny though. I have no idea. They mentioned taking something from the community. And like, but the only problem though is too. Hey Jacob. There's been like 5,000 million different ideas on water. I will say, the one I'm hoping not to see. Now, this is probably a bit contrarian and maybe not the most popular opinion, but I actually really hope they don't use the idea of making water a currency. Conceptually, it makes sense, but on a grander scheme, I don't think it does anything to water to make it more meaningful. Also, this is the wrong map. God damn it.
Maintain spacing. The sector ahead contains explosives.
I think every map contains explosives, Gunhead. I understand that like making water a currency will like immediately add some value to the currency as a way of buying things, but at the same time, I don't think it solves the issue of regarding of making water feel more important. Like, all it will do is kind of restore a little bit of, like, the fact that water doesn't, like, it's such a... Okay, heard a tank fly, I wanted to go watch. Yeah, like, it would probably be the easiest thing to do conceptually, is that for, like, them to add the ability in to buy things with water. But I just don't... Whoa, what the fuck? Who just shot me? I just don't think it would be, like, I wouldn't really vibe with it at all, right? I don't mind having water as a currency in some form on top of other things, but, like, by and of itself, it feels like such another, it feels like, once again, another stopgap. And don't get me wrong, too, I was, like, considering their posts on the Discord, I was like, okay, this makes sense, right? They want to take a break from water. That's fine. If they want to, like, let water cook for a bit, and not worry about it and do some other things, that's perfectly fine, you know? Go do some other things. But like doing another like half measure, I wouldn't really be into. And once again, this is theoretical too, right? We don't know what they're doing or what they're including, but I just hope it isn't as simple as water. You buy things with water now. Like, conceptually, think about it too, right? Like, oh man, I really want to use this gun now, but I have to get water to go get it. Let me go farm some water real quick. I feel conceptually that just adds to tedium. Rod, I mean, there's a lot of ways of approaching it, right? There's a lot of ways of approaching the whole, like, water thing, but...
I am the conduit. The human is the hand.
And I'm not sure if any of the maps feel, like, weighted enough at all to, like... One thing they could be doing too, right, is adding in like a water requirement for certain maps. And like, I really like that idea, but I'm just not... Here's the problem, right, like... Conceptually, all these things sound perfectly fine when they're added together, but when they're picked apart one by one, they don't really add to a full picture that makes sense. But if the whole goal is to like add these things one by one to combine them later, I guess that's fine. Like if they're adding in, for example, like going to certain maps takes water, none of the maps really feel, this is an overarching issue too, right? Really feel heavy in the risk versus reward. Like, if you assigned different water values to go to different maps, I can't conceptually see why one map would be worth more water than others, considering all of the maps have basically the same loophole. Yeah, and it's fair too, right? Like, I understand why it has to be that way. Rod and meat, mainly because, just like court, anything you say or do on the internet will be held against you, right? Especially for game developers who sometimes get way more flack than they deserve. Like, once again, I almost, like, there's different approaches, like, you have the devs who interact with the communities a lot and talk to them, and then there's those that don't, and I can perfectly understand those that don't. Because they can get hella toxic. Alright, we're good there. I will say, the one thing I enjoy about running no silencers, it does give me the ability to use the Scar. I actually do really like this gun, but it's, you know, no silencer. Yeah, and like, if it's part of like a greater system in regards to like if it's step one of a grander system, I understand it needs to be in place first. But like, it still would feel like very half-baked. Yeah. I am genuinely curious if they're ever actually gonna touch like medkits eventually, right? Because while the Scar is like very good at mowing down squads, it's still a battle of attrition, right? When you don't have meds. Like, I wouldn't, conceptually, I don't mind it being a currency. But just being like, if it was just a currency in the regular system right now, I wouldn't enjoy it. But if it was a currency in a bigger system, I would be fine with it. And like, don't ask questions, Reiji. Someone just shoot at me? There we go. Yeah, weirdly enough, Tarantula, I have not seen the night shift of this map in probably a month. Actually, probably longer than that. But no, yeah, like, it's weird. I would want to see water be a resource, but not be a currency. If, for example, right? And like, I wouldn't even mind too, conceptually, if it was like, okay, bear with me here, right? Hey, Booch. I want water to be like the means, but not the end. So, for example, if like, as opposed to using currency, you actually used your reputation as a bartering system. But say, for example, I wanted to buy like a Scar and like, let's say 1,000 rounds of 50 cal. So I go talk to Grillo, right? And Grillo owes me a few favors. I did a few jobs for Grillo, so he owes me some stuff. And he's like, okay, I can give you a Scar, 1,000 rounds of ammunition. It's gonna, you know, it's gonna take away this amount of like your rep, right? For like, you're basically turning in this many IOUs. And then on top of that, you need to pay the cost of the water for people to deliver it here. So as opposed to actually having water be the sole cost of certain items, it's more about it being the means of obtaining gear, or having gear to get delivered to you. I want it to be a resource, not a currency. And like, it could be a currency in some regards, right? But it's almost like a, I mean, not like, it's like more like a water tax as opposed to like a water cost. Well, Rod, there's like this aspect too, right, where right now it doesn't really feel like time passes at all in the game. Did I not do any of these? That's right. It's kind of what I would like to see much more about like a day-night system. Right now, it doesn't feel like time, like, there's like, it all kind of melds together, right? You don't really have this like feeling of the passage of time. And I feel like that kind of has to do with the IRL clock, right? The IRL clock just kind of makes that the case. Well, like, I don't know. I don't know. It's hard. Easily cemetery, Jamie. It's like, I'm trying to go like where I'm trying to go with this. There's a feeling I'm looking for. Hello, I need a better username. There's a feeling I'm looking for, and I don't think it's accomplishable outside of having like an actual feeling of time progressing in the game. I don't know how to describe it more currently than that. I would feel it kind of that if that was the original Goldenrod meat, I would say it's actually contrary. I don't think I'm describing a routine per se. Like, weirdly enough, the water system being attracted to being attached to air all the time feels contrary to that, right? Like, it feels like it takes me having time be outside of the real game or outside the game makes it feel much more gamey actually than actually more immersive, right? It takes me out of the game because I'm like, yeah, like I wouldn't necessarily, yeah, that doesn't really work for me conceptually. And I do kind of mention that in my post too, in the sense, if their goal was to make you feel like, you know, there's always a threat of like looming survival over your head, it misses the mark. What do you mean by tracking, Tarantula? By just like ADS third person? Well, Rodney, it's hard to say exactly right too. Or, like, it's hard to say conceptually, like, yeah, everything's work in progress. I think it's the same. I haven't really noticed a difference at all. Ooh, hello. Sure not. It's hard to, like, for example, I have definitely burned myself that way before in regards to indie devs and like indie companies. In regards to like, it's work in progress, you know, it'll get there in the end. Sometimes it doesn't get there in the end. So I'd much rather see it happening sooner rather than later, to conceptually kind of see where they're going with something. All right, we're not gonna shoot it all. Do we want to bring anything here? Nah. We're just gonna be sneaky. Oh, there's always plenty of interesting indie games coming out. Hey, Tarantula. Oh, no, sorry. I did a crunch on Tarantula. I did. Well, like, Rodney, that's one thing, though, too, right? In regards to, like, fairly bold quest system, but at the same time, like, that's definitely one of my pain points in the game, is I don't think the quests hit their mark, really. Like, if it's a game in the grimdark future, right, where it's about survival, and you're not that guy, I would say the current quest design seems contrarian to that. They feel much more like Tarkov quests than they probably should. And don't get me wrong, they're not even close to the level of bad of Tarkov quests. But like, they are kind of trending in that direction of like, you know, go to spot, hit E on object, go to spot, kill X guys. It feels a bit contrarian to like the whole like, you're not that guy sort of. It's like, and I know everyone's like tired of hearing you're not that guy sort of thing, right? But like, if their goal is to make you feel like a scabby survival, right? Yeah, Scavenge X is much more interesting than Kill X because you can scavenge the stuff by killing first. That's definitely a route you can do. But I do conceptually like that too. Much more about scavenging as opposed to killing. And a lot of quests right now lead into killing. But also, like, if you actually take the time to look at the dialogue too, the dialogue in the quests also just seems so off to what it feels like should be going on, right? I'm in. You piece of shit, you broke.
I don't have enough gear to survive this.
Alright. Well, yeah. Red Baron, Bring Her In, all those quests kind of feel like along those lines, right? Pyro. It's like, why am I being assigned? Do you really have no one else better to go reach out to? But it's mainly the dialogue too, right? When you talk to these factions, that they just it feels a bit weird. It feels much like how the current systems, right? Like a lot of the current systems like water, they feel like not diametrically opposed, but just inconsistent with the theme I understood the game was trying to be. And that could just be I misunderstood what the devs were intending. So just like a communication issue. But like, which is still a dangerous issue, don't get me wrong. Like, you know, that's one thing you generally have to be careful with, is how you present your game. Because people who I can personally understand misinterpreting something on my end. There's a lot of gamers who don't. Who just immediately go be mean on the internet. Unwarrantably so. Give me book. Here we go. Yeah, Omar, so like on Omar's point, right? Like the way they keep basically saying it, right, is like there's these different theaters of war, but these theaters of war are pretty local and they're all locally constrained, right? Like you might have you have like essentially an AI leading each faction in a certain region, but they're very detached from everything else. So when you're like dealing with Europans in this theater, right, there's not really a high command, it's just a local skirmish. Kind of just like the echoes of war. So it would make sense, for example, to some degree, why they're reaching out to like third parties to accomplish things. Are you still fault? My god. But conceptually too, just like it feels a bit opposed to the idea of like you're like a survival or a scavenger in the setting. Yeah, I'm not necessarily saying it needs to be all scavenging too. I definitely think there's conceptually some interesting things in regards to scouting too. Like, so what's peak rat gameplay, right? Like peak rat gameplay is like, you know, running around, looting, but not like fighting all that much, but still being opportunistic, right? Like, sure, there is definitely like the peak rat where like you never get seen at all and you never fight too, but there's also like opportunistic rats too that will also kind of fight occasionally when they see like a wounded enemy. So stuff like that, for example, right? Like, you know, scavenging, scouting. I think scouting is a big aspect too they could also explore, right? Scouting also goes into this combat voyeurism that's pretty big into the game too. Like going around and like watching battles unfold. So perhaps like something that could be like the case is that the maps don't really accommodate this right now, but like there's definitely interesting thoughts around like going to an area and observing movements, or you know, basically getting to a certain location and scouting. Or for example too, like, you know, I wouldn't mind place quests also, like going to a certain area and then placing some stuff down, like, you know, some sensors and stuff like that. Like, there's a lot of stuff they can do with quest design also. Finishing off, like, yeah, like blood, that's the case like in C2, for example. And I wouldn't even say that should be a quest from a faction. That should almost be like your reward, right? Is that like you get the lead on a certain wounded unit. We haven't done Mech Trench yet, right? We haven't done everything but Mech Trench. Yeah, all right. Plug pull. Where are you? Yeah, it's kind of how I see them approaching things like, for example, like Invincible Units Frog. Like you don't really have the means of killing units like that. However, like when you find wounded ones, that's something that you like would be like an opportunity crime, right? Like, for example, thinking of like rat behavior in Tarkov. When you come across the Chad in Tarkov, right, you're like, oh fuck, I'm not gonna go fight the Chad, I'm a rat. Like, I'm gonna go loot around and hide and stuff like that. However, if you see like two Chads fighting, or for example, you like hear a Chad, for example, like healing up because they're hurt, then you know it's a crime of opportunity, right? And that can be a similar scenario to in regards to like those heavy elite units, right? Like Mother Courages and so on and so forth. Say, for example, you would never dare, you know, cross one while they're, you know, full HP and working perfectly fine. However, say, for example, you know, Mother Courage runs into a Merkava tank and takes some fires, and, for example, it might expose some armor underneath, or might, you know, break some holes in their armor. Then it might be a combat opportunity. Let's leave out politics for now, Bob. I'm sure people are very much gassed. Let's have this be a respite. I'm sure everyone's very much gassed from the current environment. Left or right, it's all just a lot right now. Anyway, that's fair. Like, yeah, you're fine. Don't worry about it.
I hate the surface.
But going back to, and actually, like, there should be weak spots also. Like, I kind of do like the idea. I think they mentioned this also about like weak spots and stuff like that. And then, I kind of do hope they go with a pretty simple armor system. I think just having like different tiers of armor. Like, for example, like you have tiers like 1, 2, and 3 armor. 3 being the best, 1 being the worst. And like, there's 2 approaches to that armor. The first approach is just like shooting the armor to like drain it. And once you drain the armor, it's armor broken, you can start hitting its actual HP. Or the weak spots letting you avoid that armor and go like directly against HP as opposed to that. Like, you could definitely do like a full armor system, right, where you have like every single part modeled with armor and like have certain, like, you know, pluses and minuses for armor and stuff. It feels way too time intensive though. Like, conceptually, I really like Tarkov's armor system, their newer one, but man, it's a lot of fucking work, right? because you have every single carrier, like every single plate carrier. Then you have all of the plates of different types, and then you have the plates that can go in certain carriers and plates that count, so on and so forth. And it works for Tarkov, right, to get as a mill sim. But like, this game can be so much simpler. Sure. Go ahead, Zero. Yeah, raw to meat. I'm hoping for like more formations, or just, you know, more stuff like that. Defend position, all that good stuff. Hello, my sweet prince. Good night. Yeah, this is co-op PvE. And yeah, all NPCs that you find on the maps are hostile. They might have more concerns than you when you see them, like they might be fighting someone else. But like, if it's just you and them, they're hostile. Yeah, there's no PvP in the game. And pretty sure there won't ever be, which is wise. Don't go the Marauders way. Wyatt, it's something that's been fixed ever so often. It's still definitely an issue in more areas than others. In the most recent Q&A, they are very well aware of it and they're working on it. So like it's pretty top in their minds now, but for right now it's not 100% fixed yet. Yeah, like it could just be too Blood Panda, just the illusion of that also. Like, I think giving them a defensive posture in their AI system would help out so much in regards to that, because they would accidentally feel like they're defending areas. Yeah, something like that, Bob. Like, for example, just like, you know, almost like boss fight mechanics almost. So we have to do data heist and then the mech one. It's much more extraction shittery like Tarkov. They do want to have, I guess, more. I mean, even Tarkov has a story, a light story, right? They do want it to be much more dynamic in regards to its storytelling. For example, you kind of see the battlefields change with time. In regards to like an actual like story though, not much of one. Much more just extraction shittery like Tarkov. I do hope they explore having a conclusion to runs a lot more than Tarkov does, but we'll see. They never said anything about it yet, so I can't put words in their mouth. But like, I would hope. In a PvE game like this, I do really hope they explore the ideas of having runs end or having a conclusion. I feel like in PvE aspects, right, that's something that Tarkov definitely has issues with. In regards to having like a finality or conclusion, right? It's escape from Tarkov, but there's no escape from Tarkov. Yeah, I don't think we're gonna see permanently invincible units, Frog. So most of the units, except for Toothy and the invincible camp, are melee units, and it was probably a factor of different things, right? It was A, they don't have death animations, right? B, they don't have loot pools. C, they're melee, so they're really easily abused by, like, you know, sitting on top of a rock and shooting them. So it could be that that it's like in the early access period for right now, they didn't want them to feel kind of trivial, considering they were like bespoke special units, right? I haven't heard of it actually, Sin Duality. I'll look into that. Sort of like that, Zero. Like not even alternative game ending per se, but just like sort of like Risk of Rain, right? I mean, Rod, there's so like I am so like behind right now on like games coming out that like I have not looked at new games coming out for a while. Hey Hoffman, how's it going? I genuinely need to like actually sit down and look at new games coming out soon, because I haven't kept up at all. Alright, up we go. And that typically, I will say, Rod and me, is a typical trend with extraction shooters too, is the vast majority usually come out half-baked or early access and they fall apart. Conceptually, I love Marauders, but like the way they took the game, I do not love. And like it's not just their fault too. The fact they had to constantly deal with cheaters and stuff was just the cheaters in the PvP crowd. But going back, Zero, so like naturally in the grimdark forever winter, if you will, the game will conceptually it never ends, right? The war is never ending. It's going to keep going on forever and ever. So really, how do you have a sense of conclusion in this game? Well, you make kind of these long-term progression goals with your character or with your, you know, your innards, for example, or however you want to design it, right? And you kind of make reaching that end goal kind of a conclusion, if you will. Like you have established like stable innards, for example, right? Like you have managed to like build up your innards in such a way where you're kind of done. And sort of like Risk of Rain 2, right? If you ever play Risk of Rain 2, there's naturally a boss fight you can go to, and you finish the boss fight, you basically, the run ends. However, what's interesting about Risk of Rain 2 is that you can perpetually put off the boss fight forever and ever, if you so choose. You can push it farther and further away by basically doing tricks here and there. By doing other optional content forever and ever. Basically, things keep getting harder and harder and harder and so forth and so forth. I am very interested in that design space in this kind of game, where it's really only a matter of time before you're going to get almost wiped out by just the war itself. Like I would have to think think a lot about it a lot more and like put it down to concrete terms, but like conceptually the idea of like Risk of Rain 2 sort of roguelite, not progression per se, but that cycle. So say for example, like the endgame scenario is like your innards get invaded, right? Like there's this perpetual feeling of hopelessness, right? And maybe you can stave that off, but it gets harder and harder as you go. Like Risk of Rain 2 gets harder and harder as you go, right? And maybe in a much more meta or long-term way, they kind of make it where you're basically building up to this finale, right? Where because of the grimdark nature of the setting, right, your survival is only ever going to be for so long. You can only ever get so big. But what you can do, for example, is you expand your innards, you expand your bases, you do stuff like that, right? You do quests, you buy yourself time for as long as you can, but the end is always in sight, right? your innards will eventually be wiped, like kind of like the Matrix too, right? In regards to what's it called, that city down there, they get wiped out in cycles, sort of like that here almost. And naturally, you give the player the agency in that regard, because some people will just be perfectly fine vibing and not resetting, right? But you kind of make this kind of almost reset the grand design, right? Where eventually you get wiped out or pushed out and you have to start anew. And so, like, that's not giving the game an ending, but it's giving that run or that self-contained loop a conclusion, right? Where, you know, you expanded your innards, you survived for, you know, X day. That could be a cool thing too, right? If they wanted to make it where there's an optional setting where it gets harder and harder over time, you know, it could be a goal surviving for however many days, right? Almost like a challenge, or not a leaderboard per se, but a challenge. Like, how long can you keep your innards alive for and survive in this grimdark? And the end is always in sight, right? You know, when people find you out, they want your stuff. They want to, you know, come raise you. And then, like, that way you kind of, much like Risk of Rain 2, right? You kind of have this ever scaling sort of end game that eventually will reset you. But I do think too, considering this PvE nature, it's very important too, they give the option for that not being a thing, because some people want to get their stuff and hold on to it, which is perfectly fair and not fine, right? Like, if people want to have the perpetual run where they never have an issue with survival, I think that should be an option. Perhaps it locks them out of some content, like, for example, they can't get to the very, like, maybe, for example, like, one of the big things is, like, you doing this big endgame goal, and that endgame goal triggers the beginning of the end. And so, as a player, you realize if you want to keep your innards intact, you don't do that endgame goal to make sure you're not noticed by other factions. Hoffman, if you're still here, going back to Marauders were partially killed by Tarkov players too. But it was killed by... I personally think it was killed mainly by cheaters. Cheaters and very aggressive PvP players. Because in that game, the aesthetics, it was really cool, but, like, it was just so punishing unless you were sweaty. Like, considering you could just spawn into a raid in Marauders and instantly basically get boarded and get skill checked by some sweat lord, immediate turn off for so many players. And the fact is too, like the problem with a shooter like that also, if it becomes too big, naturally the RMT comes into play, right? And, like, people come into and just start, like, cheating and so on and so forth. It's why I think the PvE nature of this game was just so important in the current era. And, like, it wasn't even just that. It's because the developers tried to combat that, right? Try to deal with the cheaters, try to deal with the sweats. They were never going to win that fight. So, where is Pixel? I enjoyed it. Conceptually, I liked everything they said in the Q&A. I was like, this all sounds good. Let's see it. Like, let's see what this actually amounts to, though. I have to be very careful about the hype levels, right? Hyping yourself too much is how you get burned. Well, let's do some. I haven't done Mace all day, actually. I don't think. Yeah, like, conceptually and artistically, Omar, I really like the idea of having almost like looming threat coming eventually. At the same time, the PvE nature of this game makes it a much more, like, I would be much more okay with it if it was, if we got off the IRL timer, I'd be much more okay with forcing players through that loop, conceptually. But like, if you're a PvE game, right, you should always be catering at least to people who only play a couple hours a week, if that. And right now, the game doesn't really do that. Like, if they were going to go much more into this, like, this loop, this kind of endgame loop, for example, where, like, you eventually get wiped out, you have to restart, or soft wipe, you know, your vault. I don't think that could be accessible to more casual players unless they entirely removed the IRL timer. And maybe that's something they could be doing too. Like, maybe that could be their whole thing with, like, maybe that's what they're doing too in regards to water. Like, a heavily contested or heavy wanted feature, right? They remove the IRL timer. They make it day-based. Or however they want to base it, right? Just not be IRL based. And that could be a thing too, right? In regards to that, Bob, like, maybe the end game goal has you, for example, directly piss off one of the AIs, and they kind of maybe that's the thing too, right? So hold on, that's a silencer. Hold on, let me fix that. No silencers allowed. That's the thing too, right? Say for example, that could be part of the whole cycle in regards to maybe it's not just, for example, your innards being wiped out. Think of it this way, right? Conceptually, they were talking about how over you playing the game, they want to see certain factions take control of certain areas on the map. So for example, you know, Yoruska might win Ashen Mesa, and now Ashen Mesa is under Euruscan control, and so on and so forth. And maybe that's one of the endgame things that trigger the end, is when one of the factions become too dominant on the map. What eventually ends up happening is the other faction that got pushed out essentially does like a massive end strike or massive like re-invasion of the area, perhaps, that your innards are part of the collateral damage of. So say for example, Eurasia and Yoruska win the fight here, and they can take control of every single area on the map, right? And so as part of the contingent for that, Europa does X, Y, or Z, and then follows up with invasion, right? And during this massive invasion, you know, your innards are caught in the crossfire, and you're having to defend it. And it's kind of like a Halo Reach sort of thing, right? Like, you can fight as long as you want, but the end will happen. And conceptually too, I would love to explore it a lot more. Like, I don't think it's all the way there conceptually yet, but like the core idea sounds interesting to me. It's how you kind of have a conclusion without an end. Not about fire per se. I mean, fire bombs could be a way of doing it. Oh, fire? No, not firefight. The very last level in Halo Reach. So if you're unfamiliar, I'm going to forgive myself because this is a spoiler, but the game is like 5 million years old at this point. So in Halo Reach, right, if you're unfamiliar with the kind of Halo, essentially the humans lose the fight for Reach, the planet Reach, and so essentially the Covenant win, but you're one of the last Spartans, the last kind of Master Chiefs. You're not really a Master Chief, but you're one of the Spartans, right? On Reach. And so the last mission is you just fighting while the planet's getting basically glassed, and you're just fighting Covenant on the ground, and the fight goes on infinitely until you die. It gets harder and harder and harder, and like the whole thing is like it's hopelessness, right? It's like this is your last stand. You are here fighting till the very bitter end, killing as many Covenant as you can, but like the mission ends when you die. And you don't realize that too until when you actually die, though, too. Like, you think like you're not sure what's going on until you actually die. Like, oh, it's like, oh, interesting, and that's the end. And I will say, it despite that, it is conveyed a lot better though than Hellblade. Yeah, I actually... So, once again, spoilers for Hellblade 1. It's a pretty old game at this point, so I'm not gonna, you know, feel too bad if I get spoiled about it. But so, Hellblade, Senua's Sacrifice also has a similar thing too, where the very end is you're supposed to basically lose the fight, but like, it does a very bad job of relaying that. And so I like did the last mission for like a fucking hour. I was like, why the hell? Like, does this go on forever? Because I was winning the fights, right? They weren't getting progressively harder, like, or at least hard enough that I couldn't do it. And so like, I'm like, does this finale go on forever? Hold on. And so I finally was like, I'm gonna die and see what happens. And I died. I was like, oh, it's one of those endings. Zero. Nice. Oh yeah, so Zero, we're like, there's environmental hazards for sure. Like, we don't have a lot of them yet, I imagine, but like there's water in Frozen Swamp. There's fall damage, naturally. But like, I imagine we'll get more in the future, especially with like, we don't get artillery strike. We haven't seen artillery strikes, bombing runs, so on and so forth. We're definitely gonna get more of those in the future, right? If they can do like hell let loose artillery strikes in this game, I would be so down. So basically a last stand, yeah. And it's almost too in regards to like prepping too, right? So if we actually explore the cycle too with like having a last stand, part of it could be like preparing your vault for the future. And maybe that's a thing too, right? That's a neat concept also, for example, of like giving some meaning to the final conclusion, right? So as opposed to it feeling hopeless, maybe the longer you last in your final mission buys more time for more of your stuff to get saved. So say, for example, like, you know, the innards start getting invaded, right? You're having to defend your innards against, you know, an invasion near the end of the run, or the end of the cycle, if you will. Maybe conceptually the thing you need to do is like you need to buy time for people to like to extract stuff from your innards, and it gets harder and harder and harder. It's like, so ways you can make kind of the sacrifice or like you surviving, and perhaps that could be a thing too, right? Like say for example, you only start out with like X, Y, or Z characters. Like you only get like 1 or 2 characters at start, like say like Scavenger or Old Man. Maybe you pick 2, right? And maybe for example, you unlock more of these scavengers later on. Like maybe for example, you do a quest line, it unlocks Bagman for you or Gunhead for you. And that could be part of the whole like end game cycle. For example, is like who is going to leave the supplies, or say for example you choose all 6 of your characters to, for example, stand and fight and defend your innards to buy you time. That might give you 6 whole lives to play with, right? Conceptually, giving you more time or more lives to help, you know, stall for time. But when you go to your new innards now, you might be down to only 1 scavenger, like a starter scavenger, right? You wouldn't have any of those characters unlocked. However, say for example, you only pick 1 character to stay back and survive, right? You might not have any lives, but when you start your new innards, you might have all 5 of those other characters all around, right? Already. So we're under the Scavenger umbrella of Zero. There's multiple factions that are Scavenger. We're not really a mercenary, but we do mercenary work for other factions. Like our first goal is just to survive, right, Zero? But like to aid in that survival, we might do mercenary jobs. Hey, Odor. Basically. Kind of just more like... Please no. Leave me alone. I think we're good. Yeah, I kind of like... I like no HUD. I think medkits are kind of OP. And I think silencers are too necessary. And for those reasons, we're currently playing hardcore mode. Yeah, they're all dead. Thanks, Nicholas. Appreciate it. I'm glad they're helping you. Whoa, where the fuck did you come from? And I'm looking forward to Nicholas also in regards to the new patch. If they rework guns enough, like I've been putting off doing a new gun video until they do massive rework on guns. Like we had this small headshot update, but that's really about it. So I'm looking forward to actually seeing like an overhaul of guns. I could do a new gun video, so on and so forth. I like the unit deep dives, but they are a much bigger pain in the ass to write than the gun videos, or just like the game videos. So Pixel, I have a unit deep dive coming out. Oh, we're this. Yeah, no, that's yeah. Make things artificially difficult. But yeah, new unit deep dive coming out probably early next week, Monday, Tuesday, and then I'm hoping by like the end of February we have a new patch. Oh no, like so. The two biggest pain points right now, Zero, are definitely A, the AI, and B, like the pop-in. And by pop-in, I basically mean like units spawning on top of you. But like both things have been recognized by the developers, they're still being worked on. So one of the first things they did after the beginning of early access, Zero, was they actually put out an ad on like LinkedIn for an AI dev. So like they were aware of their shortcomings in that regard. And at this point too, we're probably seeing like, I'm hoping in the Q1 patch, the first kind of the first actual work being done by that AI developer. Because if they were hired in regards to, if they were hired in like October, November, right? Onboarded for a month basically at the very least, and now like they're actually working in earnest. I do like this lighter idea too. So if you're not familiar, in the Q&A, they basically were talking about having like more options for players for more granularity, and one of those being basically an AI system. So right now, apparently what we're seeing at range is that the AI operates at less ticks the farther they are away, right? So it's not even just the animations, but the actual ticks of the AI is slower. They update slower when they're farther away, right? And that manifests as animations mainly, I would say. But they're kind of explaining too how like they could give that granularity to the player to say, oh, I want to have the AI operate at full ticks regardless of distance. Performance be damned. And they give you that option. HK? HK. HKs. Okay, I'm probably really low HP. I need to get out of here. Yeah, that's unfortunate. Yeah, so like everything, the reason why they've given me at least a decent amount of faith to work off of right now is, Hodor, you're right, they seem like they're veterans of the industry, and they've seen some shit. This is a little pop-in. Case in point. But like it, from what they talk about, it definitely seems like they've seen some shit. Yeah, I'm so dead. I'm so dead. I'm so dead. Yeah. I probably should have just, I mean, like, no matter what, I think I was fucked there, right? Having the HKs really screwed me there. Because I needed to get it around, I needed to get around the EXO down below. But in regards to, like, for example, the biggest thing I'll always point to in this regard, too, is they seem to know their scope pretty well. Like, starting out... Yeah, Zero, that's the case in Poppin'. So, like, right now, for example, maps are divided into spawn areas and despawn areas, right? And for example, us entering the mech from, or the Titan from that side had us go inside of that spawn area, and so they spawn, because the spawn area is very shallow from the backside, because they don't expect you to come from the backside for some reason. So it ends up with Poppin' there happening a lot, and that's a prevailing theory, right? Or prevailing, you know, negative of the game is that there's Poppin', but the devs are aware of that and they're working on it. But like that's the classic example of, like, if you go from the Titan from the back, it happens almost every single Titan. Payback? There we go. It does happen quite a lot. And like, it's gotten better with time too. They have fixed a few of them, but there's certain areas that you can just like guaranteed have it happen. It's a very early access game, right? They even said themselves too, like they released it a bit early because people wanted to play it. They thought it was still underbaked, even for early access. Yeah, there's not a lot of meta stuff like that, Zero. But like, yeah, we got the game pretty early, and essentially we're seeing that. Why did I bring? Why am I putting 555? Here we go. 762. Like, it's definitely one of those games, right, where like, if you don't really enjoy early access jank, I'm like, definitely let it cook for a bit then. Because there's definitely plenty of early access jank. Let's go over to vendors, Bundleton, buy my jumps. Regions. Let's try it again. Let's actually do streets this time so we can lead that way. I wouldn't call it pre-alpha, it's just an alpha, right? Like, it's pre-beta. Like, but definitely gaming. I wouldn't call the game pre-alpha, I would just call it alpha. Like, it's semantics, but like it's not that big. It's definitely not feature complete beta. There's definitely still plenty of stuff being worked out. And I'll say too, like alpha, beta, pre-alpha, like the problem is like there's ideas behind those, but at the same time, like it almost feels like no one actually adheres to them.
Yeah, interactive art book. And if you're familiar with the history of this game too, Zero, conceptually this game started out as an art book for basically, you know, a couple out of work artists to work on. And then from there it blossomed to a game. I think they're in the works of it. Yeah, it's in the works apparently. We'll have to see how it eventually pans out, but like, no, there's definitely plenty of interest in the art book apparently. Yeah, the coffee table book of like, look at my horrors of war. Alright, anyone over there? Nope. I'm so sad they don't spawn over here anymore. It's so rare. Cows. It's too small. It's pretty quiet today actually on the battlefield. Where's all the Euruskin stuff? Oh no, Rilla definitely has a few, yeah, a few pieces of art behind the scenes. Oh, the bug is still there. So, if you didn't know, like, every map has this, but for some reason on Mesa, it's in the middle of the map, like, over the floor. But when you do a stealth kill, to sync up your animations, it places you two on the map somewhere before moving you back to where you were, I think. So, like, for some reason on Mesa, it's just in the middle of the map, in the middle of the sky. But you have, like, basically the T posing. It's quite funny. All right. So I don't have Goldberg anywhere. Is a sniper down there at least? Probably. Actually sounds like Goldberg down there. Oh no, it's a sniper trying to kill. Wait, who are you shooting at? I never actually looked that closely at this. It looks like their Tormentor's supposed to have a minigun. He actually... Oh, I'm curious. So, apparently Painless is based on the smart gun from Alien, and that looks like the little arm that you would help with the HMG with, right? So, much like Pyro, I imagine this guy's supposed to actually have an HMG. Now he's dead. Is that Merkava over here? It is. The helicopter is so derpy. Oh, should actually ate a shot too. There we go. There's the physics I like to see. It's so derpy. I love it. Basically zero. Oh, well, it looks cool anyway. Boom. Medium max? Yeah. I don't feel safe. That T90 spawned in. That wasn't my fault. That T90 wasn't there to begin with. So, Zero, both the T90 and the Merkava are probably from asset packs, just like the guns. There's a few things from asset packs in the game. Understandable. Alpha, early access, all the good stuff. The reasons, my headcanon, why they choose Merkavas, it's somewhat futuristic looking, and it's also a weird enough tank where, unless you're a tank nerd, you probably don't know Merkavas exist. So it's kind of a way, like, you can have like a sci-fi tank. At least as a base. I feel like it would feel weird to see Abrams in this environment. Or I guess a Leopard. Like all of the main European battle tanks and American battle tanks would feel weird. Don't get me wrong. I'm not in love with Merkava either, but like, between all of the choices, it's like, okay, sure. We need to call the herd. I haven't used the R shots in a while. Oh, time for Vietnam? No. Let's go Spectre, actually. In your defense, though, Zero Two, I imagine the overlap of Grimdark plus Tank Nerds is pretty... They're pretty overlapped. I could easily see, unless this game like pops off mainstream-wise, I feel like your current player base is mainly a lot of tank nerds, or just a lot of military nerds. And maybe too, right? Like, it could just be a tool for, like, if you need to get quick models for prototyping, maybe that's just the case, right? Let's do... I guess we could start here, that works. Oh no, hold on. So, if you ever have this issue, for any of you having this issue, right? Just turn it off. It's just something weird going on with Dillis right now.
I hate the surface.
Conceptually, I don't mind things like AT weapons in the game, but like I imagine they would draw you a lot of attention. Like I'm almost assuredly right. Like people have asked for RPGs a lot in this game already. It's just like it needs to be a weapon, right, where it needs to be probably pretty rare, or if it's not rare, it needs to draw you a lot of attention. And that could be a case too, for example, of like they don't do a very good job, I think, of showing it right now. However, it's reason to believe if you as a scavenger have the ability to cobble together some things and create basically an X-ray vision camera, that the other factions have access to similar technology, right? And even Lordos 2 does say like you can kind of see through walls and stuff like that. So it gives you the kind of the feeling to some extent where it gives you the feeling, for example, where like, oh, so everyone can see me, right? Like they just don't care about me, right? And if they want to have things like RPGs be like very common, because naturally, why wouldn't they, considering we have T90s around? Maybe the way they balance that is make it very clear that like you're seen on the battlefield for the most part. People know you're there. It's just a question of do they care? And you having an RPG suddenly makes them care a lot. And like the real problem, right, is how do you convey that really clearly to like the players without just like flat out explaining it to them? How do you make it? How do you make them feel that as opposed to just like know that from a gamified sense? So conceptually, too, it becomes an issue of also like, right, if you had access to an RPG, what would be the reason why you would go through the pain of equipping it, right? All of the attention it grabs you.
We miscalculated.
Okay, I'm already pretty low HP. That's not good. I need to leave. I was gonna do clear skies, but I can't do clear skies anymore. Yeah, maybe. Like, there's a lot of things they can do too. It also comes down to like what one you could buy on the asset store too, right? Though I would be surprised if they didn't have one of those on the asset store. All right, we're just leaving actually. Supposed to be damned. Yeah, it's fair. I can see scenarios too, right, Dust, where we might have certain modifiers where, like, for example, HKs are off, or for example, like, say, for example, you got a tip of, like, a Mother Courage or a Toothy or, like, a Grabber being in an area mostly alone and damaged, for example, and, like, Maybe, for example, it's like one of the few times where you're a hunter, and that's where you have RPGs for. And it could be a case too, Duffs, also, right, where it's a weapon of, like, for a quick strike, you get in, use your RPG, use your disposable anti-tank, get your thing, and then leave immediately because you know the cops are coming to come police your ass for using a big weapon like that. I definitely feel like there's definitely gonna be people in the camp too, right? Where like you give them the ability to use an RPG, and you tell them to be responsible with it because it will attract a lot of attention, and then they go complain on the forums and why, you know, when they equip an RPG, they're getting targeted out so much.
Hard run. But at least we made it.
We didn't get any of them done. We only found one of you, really? Yeah, Pixel, that's perfectly fair too, right? But it just it makes it a communication issue, right? In regards to how do you properly convey that, for example, you get big toy, you get nice big toy, but this big toy attracts a lot of attention. Like, naturally you can piece two and two together, right? Like, oh, this is a big thing that shoots big bullet, it loud, it will attract attention. But I feel like there's these at least needs to be more ways of explaining that too, for example. Oh, for sure. Yeah, they have plenty of time to cook. On their original page, right? Oh, or actually on the EA page, I'd probably still say it, where... Actually, I can just do the big one. They were saying how they conceptually want the game to be in early access for about a year. I think it's gonna be longer than that, but we'll see. It might be financial in nature in regards to how long they can be in early access for. Yeah, that's what it would definitely doing a Pixel in regards to communication, voice lines, so on and so forth. I guess let's start with Clear Skies. Get that out of the way early, and we're gonna drill in too. That's the most appropriate way of putting it, right? It's not necessarily about explaining everything, Tom. I think that's a fair interpretation of what I'm saying, because I probably am leaning into it too much, but at the same time, like, I've been around indie developers for a long time at this point, and there's definitely been instances where miscommunication has caused a lot of discord. Like, there's definitely a line to tear, right, Tom, in regards to you don't want to explain everything. That's not what I'm saying. But at the same time, when you get into convoluted game mechanics, like, for example, weapon threat, you have to make sure they're relayed appropriately. Hey, Alice.
I hate the surface.
Well, it's not even that though, Tom, too, because like what I'm saying also is it's not even just loud boom, enemies alerted. It's the you have this, enemies know you're there. So, for example, going back to the point, right, where enemies technically see you from, like, considering that us as hobos have the ability to see through walls with the scav tech, right? Most enemies probably have that functionality too, if they have any tech at all. And so, conceptually, right, it's that they see us, but they don't care about us because we're not a threat at all. But however, when they see us with an RPG, we suddenly go up their threat list a lot more. So it's not a question of us shooting the RPG, it's a question of us just, like, actually having it. Probably, Zero. And something like that, right? Hold on. There we go. Yeah, but like, when a hidden mechanic gets you killed for bringing a new toy in, there's definitely some degree of... what's right word? Bullshittery along with that, right? It feels like you... when a player can't understand the reason they died, I would consider that a pain point. And that's it. I'm not saying your opinion's invalid here, right? You could definitely take the stance too. It's a different design choice. I do think there's a fine line to toe with regards to explaining things to players. But I think if it results in you dying in a game like this, right? It needs to at least have the chance to be explained, at least a little bit. Or at least the concept being explained to you. There's definitely a fine line, Tom. Like, for example, I don't personally really enjoy, like, for example, Ubisoft's approach of just, like, showering your screen and UI with 5,000 helper tips. But, for example, right, if you go to a game like Warframe, I can't actually play Warframe anymore, right? It would take me so long to get accustomed to all of the bullshit going on in Warframe now, because there's so many moving parts. And I can't imagine how they would ever explain to you how that game works now without just going and explaining to you how the mechanics worked. Because there's just so many moving parts now. Where the hell is my damn... where's my thing at? There we go.
Perfection.
Me too, Hyper. I will say, from their Q&A, at least my interpretation was that, like, they're breaking apart the Q1 patch into a quality of life patch, and then another patch on top of that later. I think that's... I mean, if you're saying there should be a game for adults and a game for, like, not adults, I mean, I think that line's pretty blurred now, especially with younger people getting older and still enjoying the games of the past, right? Like, technically speaking, there's no reason why someone who plays Fortnite couldn't enjoy this game too. Will they? Probably not, but, you know, who's to say? Maybe they like the... When I was young, right, like, my first chance, or my first time getting, like, you know, introduced to 40K was me being in London, seeing a Games Workshop shop and seeing minis. I was like, that looks fucking rad. And, like, I still think they look fucking rad today. Like, conceptually, I love minis. I don't fuck with minis, but I love I love looking at them. They look really cool. But, like, you can also have this too. So, Tom, keep in mind too, you can also have instances where what you design as a game developer and what the players pick up on and the clientele you get might not be the ones that you were thinking, right? So, for example, Helldivers 2 popping off. The developers were trying to make the game much more like Helldivers 1, right? Much more masochistic and sadistic. And they accidentally found a power fantasy. And so you have this instance, right, where like, if you plan for a certain clientele in your game, you might accidentally trip and fall into an entirely different category of gamer. There's a difference between easy and convoluted, though. You can have a game be hard, but have the mechanics make sense conceptually without having to, like, go deep into the code and do 5,000 fucking experiments. And don't get me wrong, this is coming from someone who enjoys finding out stuff like that about the game. I'm not saying it needs to be explained to you like an idiot, but it needs to be presented in a way that actually makes it accessible to players. And personally, for me, I think like, you can allude to the fact that there's a threat mechanic without going into all the pedantic details of it, right? See it, Delta. It's not even about that, Ellis, in regards to training. It's just you need to make it very clear to the audience that there is a threat mechanic at play here. You don't need to, like, treat them like idiots and go into detail, like, this is how threat works. Threats and mechanics like that. It's like, you just make it simple. You can make it simple, like, in the sense of, if you carry more stuff, the more, you know, the threat you have, essentially. And threat makes you noticeable, right? You don't have to go into the details of, like, 5% radius increase or something like that, but just, like, make it very obvious through, like, you know, for example, just units talking in game. Maybe, like, yeah. I'm not sure if we're gonna actually get training missions, or I guess they could do it in the tutorial, right? But, like, yeah, like tutorials. If you need a tutorial, it's probably, yeah, no, it's spitballing. There's nothing wrong with that. Yeah, they can do a lot with comm chatter, right? I love the new, like, recent, what's it called? I'm getting shot at, is that someone else? I love the new recent, like, asset pack for that game, right, in regards to, like, the Ministry of Truth. Hell, I would say even GTA, that's too far for me personally. I don't, like, I guess a HUD element works. It's a pretty easy way of presenting stuff like that. I personally prefer less HUD approaches, but having a element that you can turn off is perfectly fine too. And one way, like, going on the whole chatter idea too, is, like, they talked about in the Q&A having, like, a radio host and so on and so forth. It'd be interesting too, of, like, being able to intercept comms traffic. And have that inform you on things like that. I played Scavenger a bit earlier, but you've essentially nailed it, the Great, in regards to, like, why I usually don't fuck with Scavenger. It's because of the rigs. I do enjoy her speed, but it's literally just because of the rigs. I do think the progression of the rigs is a bit not great right now, but for what we currently have, it's just bad. See you, Zero. Thanks for stopping by. Yeah, well, Tom, that's also just smart level design too, because they teach you it through level design. They don't, like, they basically trick you into doing tutorials, and it's done in a smart way. But, like, essentially it's a tutorial, right? They just teach you through play. Like, for example, the gravity gun and dog in Half-Life 2, for example, they teach you how it works, what you can do with it, so on and so forth, by like having you play with the dog with the gravity gun and making it very clear how everything works, and having Alex explain to you how it works. I mean, it's a smart way of doing it because it keeps you kind of fooled a little bit, right? But like, it is essentially just a tutorial mid-game. And they build up too, right? And like that's kind of the perk of a linear game like that, is when they introduce new things, they build it up a bit. Like, for example, they start you out pretty slow in the whole waterboat level, and as you get like longer and longer in the waterboat level, the stuff gets more and more intense. And kind of later on too, like they play the whole like loop on you, right, where they kind of change how the gravity gun works, and they make it more powerful. So then becomes like a whole thing, right, where it's opposed to just like, oh, it's a gravity gun, it's like, oh, what can the gravity gun do now? It's supercharged. On Ellis's point too of tutorials, there is the tutorial mission. Right now it takes place in the innards. It would kind of set the tone of the game, for example, if they have the tutorial kind of be not an insta-fail, but kind of like a scripted failure almost. Kind of playing into the concept of you are one scav of many. When you die, someone else takes up your mantle, along with this is the threat you're dealing with. You should feel weak and, you know, powerless, but also introduce things like mechanics like that too, right? Yeah, like a new tutorial introducing the concept of it's okay to lose, along with the threats presented to you, along with things like threat and so on and so forth. And so, as opposed to like having to explain it later on, like you can kind of cover a lot of bases at once. Like you can cover water, you can cover threat, you can cover literally like the kind of the it's okay to die setting. And yeah, it actually would like pay homage to like From Software also. And I think it gives the concept too, right, of like it would help lore explain what happens when you die. Is like the reason why you come back is because you're not the same scav. You are someone else who's taken up the mantle. Yeah, I would say, Blood Panda, it's eventually, if the game ever takes off, we're gonna get to the point where a lot of people who are watching or playing the game probably haven't interacted with the trailers, or a lot of the trailers. Some people will just buy the game because it's on sale, or they see because it's, you know, it's popping off or whatever, right? Like, personally speaking, for me, I generally will look at like the screenshots of a game, the description of a game, and then I'll like look at a few reviews, and that's how I usually will buy a game, right? I actually don't generally engage in much of the marketing of a game. This is one of the exceptions, though, I will say, right? I was actually enamored by the actual marketing of this game. But for most other games I purchase, I don't get too much into the marketing of it. That could be the case too, yeah. Just gotta make sure it's skippable though, right? People hate unskippable intros, which is perfectly fair because they are obnoxious. But no, an intro video would be interesting too. I wouldn't say I'm the marketing. I'm usually streaming to people who already play the game.
Must not be a good sign.
I am running 1440p high, though I usually run with some degree of scaling on. I think when I don't have DLSS on, it's 60% scaling. Let me go check. Let's see here. So yeah, it's my monitor's 1440p. Oh, rig. I will say too, I have particle quality on medium, so there's a weird issue with the Orgamex where they have, you'll never notice this because you have to get really close to them and they kill you, but the Orgamex have some cloth on them, and when you have particle details at that high or above, it glitches out like immediately. Rig wise, I am a 5800X, so 5800X, and then I have a 3080. I think it's a 10 gig or 11 gig, whatever it was. It's like it's a tough gaming one, whatever it's called. Other than that, I think 32 gigs of RAM. Can thank Tarkov for that. Fucking RAM whore. I was on 16 for the longest time, and then like Tarkov came out with what's it called? The military map. What's it called? Oh man, I can't remember it. What's it called? Oh man, the giant military map in Tarkov, right? Not even streets, but that map is like a ram hog, and like 16 was not enough for that map, so I went over to 32. Yeah, and people were running it on like the biggest thing it seems to seem like, Tom, is that you need to have enough VRAM. It seems like UE5 is definitely an engine that requires a good amount of VRAM. And unfortunately, NVIDIA is a piece of shit in that regard. NVIDIA seems to be enamored with gimping their low tier cards on VRAM, where that's really where you need VRAM the most, is those low tier cards. Thankfully, AMD's a lot better in that regard, but like, I've heard some stories of like people with like 3050s and 3060s, for example, having issues when they have the lower VRAM models, but yeah. And like, apparently people are on 1080s are able to play this, not like at around 30 FPS or less, but like, you can play this on a 30 or 1080. It's not a great experience, but like, it does work. But like, it's the VRAM helping it out there, right? I would be honored Duff, but I don't know what they would include somewhere. What would they do for me? Probably nothing, which is perfectly fine. What map do I do now? Kilpo was here. Oh man, I would actually say, well, we need more maps with jumping puzzles though, right? I would actually, the top of Shantytown, just some graffiti, yeah. Oh, the innards. Yeah, that's one thing I want to see more of in this game, is just jumping puzzles. I'm usually not that big on them, but for some reason I just genuinely enjoy the movement in this game with pneumatic jump. I don't know how to explain it more than that. Yeah, Tom, and like, for that point exactly is why it feels so criminal that like NVIDIA has gimped their lower tier cards for so long on VRAM. You would be better served with less CUDA cores and just more VRAM. You know, let's do some Scav Girl. I like Mech Trench. I think that I like Mech Trench a lot. However, as I've played the game more and more, the problem I have with Mech Trench is kind of like Cemetery, where it kind of plays the exact same no matter what you do, really. Like, there's not much afforded to on that map on different play styles. Let's do M16. And part of it has to do too with Mech Trench just being a pretty small map in that regard. Like, there's like, conceptually think of all of the things on Mech Trench, right? Like you have the med bay room, you have the meat grinder room, which is really just there for ambiance. You have the mech hangar, and then you have the server room. And if you think about it, right, it's just those 4 rooms and a bunch of connecting areas. So you don't really have a lot of variations in how you can visit or do those 4 rooms to create a lot of different experiences on Mech Trench. So it ends up playing a lot the same, like playing the same a lot. This is fine. We'll just go over to Scrapyard. I need more ammo than this, though, actually. Hold on. There we go. Yeah, I will say it's nice that the uplift, weirdly enough, now it sucks for Nvidia's stock. They'll make it back on B2B though. It's fine with the whole AI thing.
Don't leave anything on the cutting room floor.
Like it could just be that Nvidia's posturing more as B2B as opposed to B2C. So business to business as opposed to business consumer with the whole AI chip craze. And it could be that it requires more VRAM. But like the performance uplift of the 5000 series is nice because it means that game developers can't start planning for like massive leaps and improvements, right? Like say for example, if like the 5000 series was like a 100% uplift, just theoretically, if developers started planning for like that kind of card, it'd be worse. So I will say, it just seems like too, yeah, like every game is getting more VRAM hungry nowadays. Yeah, the whole, I honestly just don't know what to think about, well, like the whole, I am perfectly content with what I have, which is great considering the current environment, because I don't need to ever think of like having to upgrade time soon. Yeah, Pixel, that makes sense on why we're seeing the 16 gigs of VRAM. Oh no, we're not. I think we're Scav Girl and Old Man are my 2 lowest characters. I think they're both sub 10. I think every other character I have to like 20 plus, except for maybe Gunhead. But like Scav Girl and Old Man are both my lowest by far. I think Scav Girl's sub 10. That or like Tom, I'm still waiting for like, I am actually quite hopeful for Intel to pop up a bit. Like, sure, their CPUs suck now, but I'm hoping they make it with, like, the fact that they're actually making a true budget card in the current day and age is very refreshing to see. And unlike AMD, Intel has seemed to do a pretty good job of, like, fixing their drivers and keeping them fixed. If you're unfamiliar with AMD, AMD has this issue, right, where they, whenever a new game comes out, it takes them a few weeks to get their drivers up to date. Unlike Nvidia, which is like usually day one or day one drivers updates for their games. Intel seems to be getting there. Yeah, like Intel actually understands, well, they need to because they need to actually make themselves a niche. Like, they don't need a powerful card, they need lots of VRAM. Especially with upscaling nowadays too being so popular. Like, you can scale back a bit on the whole the whole like actual powerfulness and just give them plenty of VRAM so games can actually run, and then give them a decent card. And as long as they can keep their driver issues, like, as long as they can avoid the issues of drivers, I imagine Intel's market share will go skyrocketing up. Maybe allowed. Yeah, and the VRAM gets more and more important nowadays too, right? So yeah, like Intel's definitely found themselves a nice little price gap. And like AMD's been there for a while, like they've had good cards at good price points. It's just people have had such problems with them, right? They're kind of reluctant to buy AMD again or keep staying in AMD. And naturally, more competition the better, right? I like how my hair's like plastic, right? Like, is that... It definitely feels like we have cybernetic hair right now. This map, yeah, it's a weird amalgamation where like... It's a map that like... You can't generally approach pure stealth, but it's also not a map you just want to go pure aggro on either. Like, if you try and plan for pure stealth in this map, you'll get burned when you eventually draw aggro, because you almost certainly will. But if you plan for full combat too, you generally get overwhelmed and you'll die, because the brawlers will smack your bitch ass around. So I generally find the best approach to this map is like, you know, clear out the first spawn so you actually have gaps in the hole and holes in places, and then be stealthy. And you can go balls to the wall too as long as you have med kits, but you generally don't go all the way in if you're fighting, because the respawns will overwhelm you. Yeah, I do have a 4K monitor. It was an older one though, so I replaced it with 1440p. It's technically 4K, but it's 1440p ultra wide. Though for streaming purposes, I have it cut off to 1440p. Because I don't imagine that watching ultra wide stream on a regular monitor would look good. But no, yeah, like, your pain point is exactly why I'm sticking to 1440p. Like, don't get me wrong, 4K looks great, but like, I'd rather have 1440p at 60 than 4K at 30. Yeah. And I honestly say too, like, if you get steady to good frames at decent settings, I would weirdly say, as opposed to a better graphics card, an OLED monitor is more worth the money. It's so good.
Easy.
Yeah, Scrapyard is very dangerous. It's deceptively dangerous too, because like, it can calm down for a bit, and then the respawns happen and overwhelm you immediately. Nah, but yeah, OLED looks so damn good. And they, like, the biggest concern always was the burn-in on OLED. Oh, I actually don't like HDR. Well, that might change, for example, because the problem was like early game HDR was not configured properly, and it would blind you. I think it was like the old ID software screens, right? Well, it's not even that too, right? ID software, for example, Doom, for example, they their splash screen or intro screen was white, a white background, and when you had HDR on and you loaded into like Doom Eternal, oh my god, it was a flashbang. It's so painful. And for reasons like that, I don't generally like HDR for games, because like when it's included, it's not generally, it feels like balanced properly, because it genuinely feels like a flashbang. It's disorienting how bright the screen can get. All right. So in regards to Scav Girl, oh, she's 17. Holy shit! I totally guess she's leveled up quite a bit. Yeah, old man's 10, Scav Girl 17. I thought she was way less than that. 23, 22, 15, 20. So by far, Mass Man's my biggest. See, on this point too, for example, like, if you're unfamiliar, the TACAM's a very useful tool, but for newer players also, it kind of doesn't necessarily relay that it makes sound immediately when you're using it.
Remember.
So if you're unfamiliar, when you're currently in this mode, you actually have your passive aggro radius, I think. It modifies it probably, or just actually has one itself. So like when you go into this mode, it makes sound, and it's not like readily apparent, right? Get punked, bitch. I think Pixel are trying to go for that alien vibe, right, of the motion tracker. I wonder if that's actually their plan, Pixel. So like this is okay. That's like almost assuredly like the tracker sound from Alien, right? Or very like copy-esque of it, or reminiscent of it. Copy-esque. So maybe that's their plan, for example. Maybe they're gonna make it so that like it's actually much more of a motion tracker as opposed to a see-through walls tracker. So you can like see units when they move around through walls, but for example, stationary units you wouldn't be able to see. So imagine if the dog was like stationary hiding. Well, that's perfectly fair too, yeah. That's a fair pain point. But I wonder if because it's like the tracker from Alien, we're gonna see instances where like they actually change it to be movement based. It's definitely like an aspect of I think that the grab that's missing right now is like it's being able to see it through walls, like kind of cheapens it a bit. I don't get how do you have such nice shoes? Why are your shoes so nice? Why are my shoes so nice? These are like fucking hiking boots. What the hell? Where am I? I think Old Man actually has appropriate boots, right? But like, you have nice boots over here. Like, that has treads on it. Like, these should be worn as fuck. Unplayable. Too nice of shoes. Yeah, don't worry. It's not like the dog tries to follow you around at all. It just gets stuck there constantly. Let me loot you. There we go. I mean, it's better the great. It can still happen pretty consistently. You generally have to try by fucking around with the dog a bit, but like, there are still instances where it will like the syncing isn't great still. So for example, if you're like lower HP and you try to mess with the dog by jumping with pneumatic jump, the syncing doesn't make a lot of sense. Like, right now, how they approach the sync kills is that they currently, like, when the conditions are met and you're within a certain range, or when the conditions are met, right, they teleport you together to sync you up so you guys can perform the animations. Right now, I definitely feel like there needs to be some system where, like, the process in which they get you to sync up needs to be a bit more fluid. And naturally, saying that's a lot easier than done, probably, well, naturally. But like right now, there's a lot of instances where you'll still get teleported around before the sync kill. Case in being, like, for example, you jump up in the air with pneumatic jump. If you're low enough HP, the dog will just teleport you out of the air and execute you. Oh, it's great. It is like the best tool of all time. Like, sorry, attack cam, but pneumatic jump's better.
Easy enough.
All right. The turrets are fun, but they're just kind of... The turrets are fun to use, but the problem is that they're just kind of... They're a bit derpy. Like, so, they're the 20 mil turrets, so they don't shoot very far and they have a lot of spread. I mean, I get plenty of experience, right, to spread it out a lot. I generally don't... I'm not too focused on, like, hyper looting, for example. I'd rather... Like, keep in mind, too, we're playing with no HUD, no silencers, and, no healing. So, what we can get and get out with is a lot better than taking fights to get more. Typically speaking, if I'm XP farming, I'm gonna go to like an area just to mass murder mobs over and over again. Unfortunately, I don't have enough. So like, turrets don't do enough damage by themselves, along with being pretty inaccurate and not that tanky. You kind of need a few of them to start being worthwhile. And they are fun to use, they're much more of just like I want to have some fun with turrets as opposed to this is a useful tool for me to have. I'm sure it works, but it just kind of goes into the whole thing too, right, Duffs, where it's almost just better not to piss off the dog in the first place. This is the enhanced rig. That's the rig that, like, basically there's no reason to use because everything's better. But for Scav Girl, during her level ups, it's one of the first rigs you get, are the enhanced rigs here, before you get to the better one here. I think you go over to Gunhead. That's definitely a thing too. I would hope to see fixed in the future. The progression through the rigs. It's literally there's 3 rigs to use in the game, I think. There is the pack mule, there is the runner, and that you can basically probably just stop there. Every rig outside of that's kind of a niche rig. Like you have your gun runners if you want guns, and then you have the rack if you want a meme. Or I guess just collect a lot of large items. But like, there's so many rigs that just kind of feel, like if these had stats, for example, too, it'd be interesting also, but like, there needs to be more reason to have or to use smaller rigs. Later in the game, that is. Alright, time for painless. I think it's time for painless. We haven't used painless all day. No, I don't think so. So, I mean, who's to say though? I'm sure they have very interesting character designs. I'm sure we'll see more like distinct scavs, like Gunhead a bit more, or reworks for old ones. Because they did say that they actually want to like add activated abilities to all the other characters too. What map? Sure, we can do some elephant. It feels a bit foolhardy to actually do elephant with painless, but why not? Yeah, I wouldn't mind more customization, but I'd rather just see like actual, not necessarily I guess stats in some way. Like conceptually, one thing they could probably easily do is modify your stealth by what rig you're carrying, and perhaps weight. So, for example, the base rig might be like one of the best rigs in regards to stealth, which would help you out earlier on in staying alive. But as you go on and you start getting the bigger rigs, the problem becomes, like, for example, them being louder. Alright, good there. I mean, I guess we'll pick up you. You probably won't spawn though. These are pretty rare to get. Regions, Mausoleum. Oh, hold on, I need to fix my thing with Aramaki real quick. Aramaki, I'm sorry, baby. How would you like 60 E-nuggets? There we go. Well, it was 60 of them. Yeah, Mr. Mispar. Definitely an approach they could do. Keeping like smaller rigs relevant in the like later areas, like having to balance like how much you can carry with how stealthy you can be. I'm still confused on what they might be. It definitely feels like maybe something that you would like actually, if you had the mod for it to like inject, I guess. Because they look like they slotted or something like that. No. I don't want to have to murder you. I am stealthy head. Mr. Grooves. Oh no, the art in the game is great, right? It's one of its key selling points is the art. I should honestly be a lot pickier with what I'm picking up, actually, considering I do not want to get HKs. The Tower of Meds I can't use. No. 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 I guess what these probably are these are for like from the 3D printer. So part of the lore of the game is like during the night shifts, the 3D printers will come out and just start rebuilding everything. So it kind of looks like a lattice like you'd see the 3D printers, right? It's like extra residue. Please go away. I don't... Self-defense, he shot first. Flying tank, flying tank, flying tank. That thing got catapulted. Oh, there it is. Oh, I'll never change. Has this always been here? I think so, right? I want these bunkers to be like go-inable so bad. I want to see much more of these like trench networks around. I want more CQB basically. All right. In we go. Is there a box on a wall? No, okay, never mind. I mean, they didn't flat out answer it, but they kind of alluded how like it definitely seems like they are alluding to that they're not going to be their own maps. Like they're not going to be like, for example, Big Green's not going to have insides you can walk around in, for example, right? So I imagine like much like for example, this area over here seems like a very clear place you would have, for example, Big Green be in. So it might be only one of the few maps you might see Big Green on. And it could be a thing too, right? Where like there's certain areas, like it might be almost sometimes an off the map sort of thing too. Where it's fighting off the map. or rather barraging the map from off the map. So for example, there's plenty of areas on Ashen Mesa where it could be, or for example, actually what they could do too, if they replaced the, so right now, how Ashen Mesa works is you have the Titans coming out from the fields, coming into Ashen Mesa to fight Yoruska and Eurasia holding the city. But if that was flipped, for example, you replace the Titans with Big Green. And as opposed to having that Titan into the map, you actually have Big Green into the map, and it barrages the map with its mech fire. Yeah, I don't think it, yeah, they're not going to have their own map, Shimba, from what I understood. It just seems like they're going to be part of the older maps, and there's certain areas where they could fit, right? Like, for example, Elephant Mausoleum, the Giant Fields, or then Mesa, they could replace the Titans. Though I imagine there's going to be definitely some maps where they won't fit, right? Like mech trenches and so on and so forth. Like, it's too big for that. Though, I could definitely see scenarios too, for example, where considering how big that mech is, it'd be really cool to be in the mech trench and like hear it walking overhead. Like it's so big and you just actually cross the trench lines with by stepping over it. Or rolling over it. Poor guys. Yeah, let's open a door. I can definitely see the case too, for example, of like, as an activated ability, giving Shaman the ability to like hack doors without having to do this. Seems like a very Shaman-esque ability. No. That's right, bad dog. Alright, good there. I'm still missing, I think, the tools for sure. I guess we can go into the hangar and see if we can do anything there. See you, Pixel. Have a good weekend. Have a good one. Oh, also, man. It's so low on my priority list, but having a melee system would be so cool. Like, just something a bit more than animation locks, it would be, like, amazing. Alright, here's a pop-in. Now go the other way. Other way. There definitely is. It's like low priority for me, but like having the bayonets would be so cool. It would also, like, there's definitely a reason for improved melee just because of it might make scenarios where you have ammo or guns much more scarce. Oh, it has a dodge. So it has this. It's control and then like a left or right direction key. Essentially, like it's really janky because it locks you like in that direction. Like there's a degree of animation lock to it, where like once I can't go like up or right, left or down when I'm doing this. It has to finish before I can move. But like the plus side is it does make you immediately. Why can't I pick you up? There we go. It does immediately move you at full speed. So like say for example you're carrying a lot as like Scav Girl, having that quick burst of speed can get you behind cover before you die. I just don't like the jankiness of it because it's like very, very stiff. One artillery shells, please. I want to hear like off map 155 so bad in this game. Bad. It's like definitely like the one thing I'm missing right now is like artillery. Artillery is king. Got two done. Yeah, in the crosshairs, like in the Q&A mention, they mentioned too, for example, quests, how he was talking about basically how you shouldn't feel the need to complete quests in single runs. And while that's fair, like I don't mind conceptually that being the case, the quest rewards I don't think reflect that currently. Like, if this is going to be a quest that takes me like 4, 5, 6, 7 runs to do, it needs to have the rewards to reflect as such. No, I mean, all characters are stiff with the animations, right, in regards to like dodging. I can see it being useful on a character like Scavenger because when you were carrying a lot as Scavenger, it slows you down a ton, and the dodge doesn't care about that. It just goes at full speed. So it kind of alleviates the whole, like, you're carrying too much. The reason why I don't like Scavenger is because you have to unlock the rigs, and I find this, in the current experience system of constantly resetting, I hate this system. Because it constantly requires you to juggle rigs, especially early on too. That's true with every character though. Every character is pretty stiff in regards to environment. Like one of the biggest learning curves for newer players earlier on is definitely getting used to the movement and like the amount of terrain that will clip into you or clip you and stop you in your tracks. Like, so yeah, this quest gives you an XM25, 1000 XP, and plus faction, right? And the XM25 might seem like a just reward, but there's so much easier ways of getting grenade launchers. Like, if this was the only way of getting a grenade launcher, for example, then sure, but I can just buy one off Grillo. Oh, Jim Bob, you could, yeah, there's definitely ways of doing it, right? Where, example, like, it wouldn't be targeted either, but it would just be like artillery going on, like you would hear the artillery strikes off map, right? Like that would be the way of knowing it's like the clear off map sounds. Like, I think that's like basically every game does it, right? Like even Hell Let Loose, you kind of hear the sound of distant artillery when it's coming in. I don't think always though. Like sometimes you don't know until you actually hear the first strike hit. And then you're like, oh shit, get the cover. And it is cool panic-wise too, right? Like, don't get me wrong, I don't think you should blow up immediately too, right? But like having that instant panic of like an artillery strike hitting and like, oh shit, I need to get to cover now is super cool. Because much like how I like, so one of the reasons why I like no med runs is it can change your priorities mid-run, right? When you have infinite medkits, you just have your plan and you do it regardless of what's going on because you have infinite health essentially. But when you don't have medkits, when you get low HP or something bad happens or you have bad luck, you suddenly need to change your strategy or change what you're trying to do in the run. It becomes no longer trying to do this quest, it's about surviving and getting out. And artillery strikes or events like that can kind of do the same thing, where it suddenly becomes about doing your quest and comes about, I need to go seek cover immediately and try and survive. And stuff that dynamically changes, and there's definitely a fine line to toe, right? You don't want to have it happen so much that you never can do your quests, but it's nice to actually have the changing kind of priorities at mid-raid. Correct. Yeah, that is double I, or I guess quad I. That is the only canonical lore video I have, is because it was provided by Fundog. Like, for the most part, that's exactly what they gave me. I did do some rewordings here and there to make it flow better for my speech patterns, but for the most part, it's just all from what they provided. It's why it gets its own little playlist, because it's the only actual, like, canonical lore video I have. Time for old man. We have not played him all day. It is time. SVD. I think that's fine. Let's bring a backup shotgun, I guess. We're just bringing, like, I guess 96. And a jump. We'll go, yeah, that works. Yeah, the real curse of using Scavenger. That's honestly too the great why I prefer Masked Man so much. Is like he's the perfect compromise of just like everything, right? He gets most guns, but not all guns. He gets most rigs, but not all rigs. He's not the fastest, but he's not the slowest. He's got like a good amount of health too. Like he is like the best, just middle round, all around character. You have Shaman if you want to move a bit more into like the speed category, but like for the best all-rounder, if you want to do the most, the best character to do is Masked Man in that regard. And that might change too, for example, right? His skill tree is like the most generic, it's just guns. But until we see like more skills from all of the characters, or more bespoke skill trees for all the characters, he's really just the best all-rounder. He might eventually suffer in his skill tree, right? Like if we see a lot of abilities for the other characters, it might just be that, you know, Masked Man's your ability is your guns. All right. My favorite spot about this map is the pipes. I'm very happy they incorporated at least this into the map. I would love to see more of the pipes be usable, but I'll take, you know, a few of these for now. More verticality. More jumping. Like, I would love that too in regards, like, for example, it would... For certain maps, it would be very interesting from a gameplay perspective in regards to, do I take the easier... Do I take the less populated path that's dangerous more travel-wise? Like, conceptually, right, it'd be very cool to have, like, travel hazards. Like, precarious cliffs, if you will, that you have to navigate through. As an additional threat to contrast the actual enemies, right? It's not bad, there's just a lot of trees in the way. But like, I would love more travel hazards along with enemies, right? Sometimes the actual danger is not necessarily the people you find along the way, but just the way you go. I think right now the only problem with Big Green in this map is it's got all the trees everywhere, right? Though, on that note, actually, it's probably gonna be hard to see. If Big Green could just wade through the water, like it didn't care, there's our plenty. Oh my god, it's popping off. What is going on here? Whoa, 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 whoa. Why is everyone shooting me? I'm sorry. Yeah, it's fair. Like, well, the problem becomes in, yeah, like, could they implement destroying the trees? They could, but is it worth the time? If we go over to here, right? Unfortunately, that's in the way. The Titan's not really. That, not really. Also, vibes. There's actually an area we can go. I'll show you where you might be able to be at. And also, it could be one of those things too, right? Where it could just be an instance where you see it. It is. You see it off map, for example. So as opposed to, say, for example, like, you see the trees over there, you see like Big Green fighting some units over there in the distance, right? So even though like Big Green might not be on the map fighting you, it might be off map still affecting your map or like being a vibe. And it could be too, when you have mechs that big too, having Big Green could just be like a status effect. So for example, like, you know, oh, we're playing today Frozen Swamp with the effect of Big Green. And what that means is Big Green's situated off map, just throwing in artillery and shooting things, and just basically layering the map with gunfire and bullets. Alright. Getting shot at? Someone else getting shot at. Someone else getting shot at, okay. So, of like all of the areas, if they were to like do destroyed trees, or just like remove the trees and place Big Green there, we have like two different areas, which we'll be able to see in a second when we get over here. So, like, first we have this giant area over here that's pretty expansive in between these two injector sites. Now, it is a little kind of, like, boggy, murky, so, like, you would think Big Green would sink, but, you know, it could be over here. All right, let me start lowering you. I can't wait for this to have sound. Imagine it to be so freaking loud. Okay. So, let me get up here, actually. Perfect. So we have like this expanse over here that's pretty flat and open. So like if they wanted to put a big green, it's a pretty massive area they could do. Though the pipes being in the way kind of stop that, right? It would kind of be not make sense why it would be here. So they destroyed a few things. But now like over here, like anywhere in between here if they destroy anything. But I don't think big green could probably be on this map. There's too much shit in the way. Very good. Like, it could go through the trees there, but there's all these pipes in the way too. But you do have like this over here too, right? Where you have the fields over here, like slightly off map, where you could have battles going on the on the outside of the map. Like you have this area over here too. You have, yeah, if it's so big and just walk over the pipes, that's a concept too, right? But you have all this real estate over here too, where you can have battles going on in the distance. I think I slide down now. We're good here. Is there a way down from here? I totally forgot. Everything looks like it hurts. Ruh-roh. Alright, well, I guess we have to go down this way. Hopefully this doesn't kill us. So you're safe coming up here. However, on the very, very last trip down, you generally will slide down. Which hopefully doesn't kill us, but we'll see, I guess. So this might hurt and kill us. Yep. Now, if you had medkits, it'd be fine. But no medkits there. We were already pretty hurt, I imagine. So keep that in mind. You can get up that way, you just have to have medkits to get down. All right, it's time for an actual, factual, painless run. And you know what, just for a cherry on top. Boop. The only problem, right? We're bringing so much ammo, there's no way we go through all of this with how much HP we have. Considering our lack of medkits.
If we get home without you, I'll tell you.
I believe in you, Lone Turret. Do your job. I have no faith in this thing, by the way, by itself. This is why turrets in small numbers don't get used. It's so floppy. Why is it so floppy? It's got 1, 2. Why? Why is it so floppy? Come on, buddy, you can do it. There with 3. No, so there's 2 turrets. There's the 20mm turret and there's the regular turret. The 20mm sucks. The regular turret actually works pretty well. I don't know what it is about this thing that just has it to be so bad. But yeah, there's a regular turret, and the regular turret's actually kind of scary. This thing is not. If you see 20mm on a turret, it's not going to hurt you. It can't. 4? That's 4 or 5 kills now. Racking it up. By the way, I can't actually shoot scramblers. Well, it was fun turret, but it's not even the floppy, it's just so inaccurate. And don't get me wrong, it does work when you have like 9 of them through just the sheer volume of fire. But when you just have 1, it does not work very well. I guess it's 8 with the rack. Like, it is fun to do this with 8 of them, but it does not work with just 1. You have to bring in the rack with it. Even 3 is not that great. Like, you have to have the massive volume of fire of having 8. Fucking officers, man. I'm already probably low HP right now.
Watch those corners. It might be quick.
No. It's actually one of the few walls that actually has decals. That's so nice. For some reason, just like a lot of the maps right now will just eat your bullets. Like decals. See, all of this. So, yeah, case in point, right? We have decal wall, and we have wall. I wonder if it's the overlay, actually. Like, so we have real walls, like even down here too. It seems to be like this, the lattice decal, or whatever this lattice what you want to call it, is like actually obstructing perhaps the decals from forming. Oh, I'm so dead. But like a lot of the trains like that right now, currently, right, where it's kind of like this lattice where it just eats the bullets. Robbing you of the beautiful decals plus bullet impacts. Though, I will say the effect does last. The bullet impact does look good, but I feel like it disappears too quickly. Oh, this map is basically infinite. I could be here like all day. Yeah, screen shake. I'm probably like sub 100 HP right now. This is the you should be leaving your herd. Let's see how bad we are. Oh. It's worse than 50. It's a lot worse than 50. It's a lot worse than 50. Just a little hurt. A little flesh wound. Just one at a time, over and over again. Can I loot? Currently, if I get shot once, I'm dead. Oh no. Alright, I think it might be time to leave. Yeah, two grenades will hit you for a lot, and then we take some more damage too from that shotgun. I mean, I don't know. Because sun bright? I don't know. It is probably a bit too bright, but I don't know. It's fine. It's reflecting off all the concrete. And we lived. We definitely didn't go through all of our ammo. We actually did go through a decent chunk of it though, I will say. A lot more than I thought. All right. That's it for today, guys. Thanks for watching. Have a good Valentine's Day, have a good weekend, and I'll see you guys on Monday for the next stream. Other than that, new video coming out probably Monday, Tuesday next week. Another unit deep dive. Other than that, take it easy. Have a good weekend, everyone, and bye all.